Hi guys, today we will be reviewing our measures of central tendency, range, and variability. First, let's review the definitions. The mean is the average of a set of data. To find this, we will add all the numbers together and divide by the number of items in the data set. The median is the middle number when the data set is lined up from least to greatest. The mode is the number that appears the most often in a set of data. The range can be found when we subtract the smallest number from the largest number in a set of data. And variability is when the data that's collected has different answers. Now let's solve a few guided practice problems together. For each data set, we will be finding the mean, median, mode, and range. Our first step is to order our data set from least to greatest. 19, 28, 52, 52, 72, and 72. Now that we have our data set from least to greatest, we will first solve for the mean. To find the mean, we will add up all of the numbers in the data set and then divide by 6, the amount of numbers that there are. When we add up all of the numbers, we get a sum of 295. Next, we can divide by 6 to find the mean. Six cannot go into 2, but it can go into 29 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24, and we get a remainder of 5. We'll bring down our 5. 6 can go into 55 9 times. 6 times 9 is 54. When we subtract, we get a remainder of 1. We will need to add a decimal point and bring it up in our answer, and a 0. We can bring down our 0, and 6 can go into 10 1 time. 6 times 1 is 6, and we get a remainder of 4. We can add another 0 and bring it down. 6 can go into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36, and we get a remainder of 4. Since we will be rounding to the nearest tenth, we don't have to keep going with our division. We can look at the number to the right of the tens place, the 6, and determine whether or not our tens place needs to be rounded up. 6 is greater than 5, so we will round up our 1 in the tens place to a 2. So our mean for this data set is 49 2/10. Next, we will solve for the median. We can find the middle number in the data set. Since there are 6 numbers, there will be 2 numbers in the middle. Since both numbers are 52, we do not need to find the mean of the 2 numbers. 52 will be our median. Next, we'll look for the mode, or the number that appears the most often in the data set. Both 52 and 72 appear the most often in the data set, with 2 times each. So our mode for this data set will be 52 and 72. Last, we'll solve for our range. To find the range, we need to look at the smallest value and the largest value in the data set and subtract the two. We can subtract 72 minus 19 and when we do, we get 53. Our range for this data set is 53. For our next data set, we will order the numbers from least to greatest. 13, 26, 34, 41, and 53. Now we can solve for the mean. To solve for the mean, we will add all of the numbers together, then divide by 5 the amount of numbers that there are in the data set. When we add up all of the numbers, we get a sum of 167. Next, we can divide by 5. Five cannot go into 1, but it can go into 16 3 times. 5 times 3 is 15. We're left with 1. It can bring down the 7. 5 can go into 17 3 times. We get a remainder of 2. Then we can add a decimal point, bring it up in our answer, and add a 0. We can bring down the 0. 5 can go into 20 4 times. So our mean for this data set is 33 4/10. To find the median, we will look for the number in the middle of the data set. 34 is the number in the middle, so our median is 34. Next, we will find the mode. I don't see any numbers that are repeated in this data set, so for this data set, there will be no mode. And last, we'll solve for the range. I will subtract my smallest value from my largest value, 53 minus 13. And when I do, I get 40. So the range for this data set is 40. For this data set, I will first order my numbers from least to greatest. 5, 5, 5, 16, 16, 28, 35, 48. Next, I will solve for the mean by adding up all of my numbers in the data set to find the sum, and then divide by 8 the amount of numbers that there are. When I add up all of the numbers, I get a sum of 158. Next, I can divide by 8 to find the mean. Eight cannot go into 1, but it can go into 15 one time. We're left over with 7, and we can bring our 8 down. 8 can go into 78 9 times. 8 times 9 is 72, and we get a remainder of 6. We can add a decimal point and bring it up in our answer, and a 0 to bring down. 8 can go into 60 7 times. 8 times 7 is 56, and we're left with a remainder of 4. We'll bring down another 0. 8 can go into 40 5 times. We want our mean to be rounded to the nearest tenth. So we need to look at the 5, the number to the right of the tenths place, and we will need to round our tenths place up because our number is 5 or more. So our mean for this data set is 19 8/10. Next, we will solve for the median. To find the median, I need to look for the number that's in the middle of my data set. Since there are 8 numbers in my data set, there will be 2 numbers in the middle, 16 and 16. Since both of these numbers are the same, we do not need to add them together and divide by 2 to solve for the median. Our median is 16. Next, we will look for the mode, the number that appears the most often in the data set. 5 appears 3 times, which is the most in this data set. So our mode for this data set is 5. And last, we'll solve for the range. I will subtract my smallest value from my largest value, and we get 43. So our range is 43. Next, we will review variable data and statistical questions. Remember that variability is when data has different answers. A statistical question requires collecting more than one piece of data with variability in the data. An example would be how much the average cat weighs. There are cats of all different sizes, so the data that we collect would have variability. A non-statistical question only requires collecting one piece of data. An example would be how much your cat weighs. We would only need to collect one piece of data to figure out the answer. Down below, we will determine whether or not the questions are statistical or non-statistical. We will write an S for statistical and N for non-statistical. The first question is the cost of a water bottle each day. This would be non-statistical because the water bottle's cost would be the same each day. We only need to collect one piece of data. The second question says how many cousins each student has in a class. This would be statistical because the data would vary. Each student would have a different number of cousins that they have. The third question says how many teachers are at North. This would be non-statistical because we only have to collect one piece of data to figure out the answer. The fourth question says how much money people usually pay for a new game. This would be statistical because depending on the type of game, the cost would be different. So each student would pay a different amount for a new game they were wanting. So we have to collect more than one piece of data, and that data will have variability. Question 5 says how many students were in line for lunch at the cafeteria today at 12:30. This would be non-statistical because we only have to collect one piece of data to find the answer. We can look exactly at how many students were in line at exactly 12:30 in the cafeteria. Now you will complete a mean, median, mode, and range quizzes. as well as a variability quizzes to review. Remember to start your exit ticket at the beginning of the second block of class.